Hello again. Ooh. Sorry, I have mosquito bites on my face, also a sunburn. Today, this video, I've alluded to it before, and so, you know, it's about darn time I recorded this, but I'm gonna share with you guys my experience being hospitalized in the state mental psychiatric institution, hospital, whatever. A couple precursors, something. Whatever, a couple things that I should say first. First is that this is still something that's very hard for me to talk about, so I may have to like cut out and then come back, or whatever the case may be. It just depends on like if I need to stop and go calm down, distract myself a bit, because it was very traumatizing. And also, if you are new to my channel, or didn't see the videos that I had posted about my tics that were up, I've taken them down because I want to approach that in a different way. But just for those of you who didn't end up seeing that, or for those of you who are new, I do have tics sometimes, and those might emerge as I'm talking about a really, excuse me, a really stressful, traumatic experience. So just kind of quickly to explain that. So yes, this is take one, attempt one. So as I say in almost all my videos, because I don't want to waste time explaining it all over here, go watch my video on Autistic Catatonia, because I have that, and this is kind of, that was the precursor to my hospitalization, as it were, or a little bit. But yeah, so I have Autistic Catatonia. First major kind of episode, really. There, you know, I went nonverbal, and I had been nonverbal for about 6 months at this point, and it was just a slow regression, getting worse and worse. I had gone off to college, a college that I'd been to before, a really tiny town, tiny college, and I'd gone there while nonverbal, but they accommodated me, and so, and I started having the catatonia. And I had a little bit of it before, but I didn't know what was going on, and it came and went, and, you know, but I started having issues. I started having movement issues, you know, on top of being nonverbal already, which was something that was concerning people, you know, who didn't fully understand that that's something that happens to autistic people, kind of as a response to anything, really. Difficult as a response to stress, and I was in a very stressful situation already. But anyway, so I'm at college, and I start having movement difficulties. I start sort of having this, my walking pace is just like a shuffle. I couldn't move very fast. It was very slow, very sluggish. My steps were inch by inch, literally, and even then, sometimes it would take a very long time to initiate each step. You know, so getting from my bed to the bathroom would take a while, that kind of thing. And so it kind of started, and that just got worse and worse, and I wasn't able to leave my bed, basically. I had a couple housemates who were very supportive and very loving, and they had ended up going to a medical supply, whatever, and they had just kind of gotten a rental wheelchair, because I was mentally functional, wanted to go to my classes, but, you know, it would take 80 years, and I couldn't get very far without just being straight up exhausted. Like, I could try to leave my room and go to the classroom, but I wouldn't make it there before being like, alright, I've got nothing left, you know. So, you know, I was in my bedridden, basically, and it just got worse. It got worse and worse, and the first time I had gone to the ER was it was a service day, and everyone was, you know, doing different projects around the town, and I was down helping in the cafeteria, because they specifically let me go there, because it was empty, you know, just a better sensory environment for me. And I started Oh, that's right. You know, I was already having movement issues at this point, but I could go. It was just very, very slow. And it was new. It was like 1, maybe 2 days, if that, had just started, and they were aware. And I was like, well, you know, what can I do? I don't really know what's going on. I mean, of course, I was researching like crazy, trying to put the pieces together before things got out of control. And so I'm in the cafeteria cleaning, and this fog sort of came over me, and I could feel myself kind of reaching shut down. My body just, I was spent, I was exhausted, and I could just feel this sluggish fog where like I would kind of space out. I would really struggle to initiate movement with my body. My brain, I would know like, okay, I want to reach and grab this spray bottle and wash this table. But I'd stand there while my brain is sending the message to my arm, and I'd just have to wait until my arm finally got the message. And it was very strange because it wasn't like I said, it wasn't a decrease in cognitive functioning. It wasn't that I forgot how to lift my arm or forgot how to move, spray a spray bottle. My brain was sending the signal to my limbs, and it just wasn't happening. There was this huge delay. You know, and so the catatonia, autistic catatonia, and I'm going to do a video, or a couple videos, differentiating autistic catatonia from autistic shutdown. But for the purposes of this video, the main distinction is autistic catatonia is an issue with initiating movement. So I know exactly what I want to do, and I know how, but the message isn't getting from my brain to my arm in a timely manner. May not even get there at all. With autistic catatonia, you know, if someone came to me and prompted me or reached their arm and I could see them complete the task, I could do it. If they verbally prompted me, okay, grab the spray bottle, okay, spray the spray bottle, like, then I could do things. And that's autistic catatonia. Kind of how it works is relying on verbal or visual prompts to complete actions. Crash course for you guys on that. So anyway, so that's what it was. And I had ended up over by the windows, and I was kind of cleaning them, and I just, you know, it was slow. I could feel it just getting worse and worse. It was taking me longer and longer to take one step, and I think, I don't know if just the stress of not knowing what was going on or whatever. I don't know if I reached shutdown or if it was just a worsened catatonic state, where I just kind of slumped down onto the floor and I had nothing left. It's just total kind of a non-movement, I mean, like what you would think of with a catatonic episode. And I texted the campus chaplain and a close friend of mine who was close, and you know, she was the person who would sign with me. I know a very decent bit of ASL because, like I said, I'd been nonverbal for quite a while. I just, at that point, I broke. It's very hard for me to ask for help, especially if I don't know exactly what's going on. I have a lot of trauma. So it's stuff that I keep to myself, but at that point I was just like, I don't know what else to do, and I told them, this is scaring me. I could feel, at that point when I'd slumped down on the floor, I could feel my heart. It started not beating steadily. There's stops, there's palpitations, there was skipping beats. My blood pressure would spike and fall, and I could feel it. My heart would speed up and slow down, like this total dysfunction of these involuntary processes, and I was afraid that I was dying. It was very scary. My body was kind of stiff and moving was hard, and I just was like, you know what? Clearly there's something going on. So even if I'm afraid of them dismissing me and saying, you are mentally broken, I knew that stuff was going on physically, and they had to be able to see that at least. So I went to the ER for the first time. They ended up giving me Ativan, which is the medication that treats the catatonia, because at that point, you know, I kind of had researched enough or whatever, suspected it, and if nothing else, I knew that for maybe a psychotic catatonic episode, which I don't have psychosis, but I'm just like, well, what I understand, at least thus far, is that my body's stiff, I'm kind of losing skills here, maybe just my body just needs help calming down. I don't know, maybe it's just a crazy overloaded stress response. So they gave me a dose of that, and from that moment, I was picked up by an ambulance, taken to the ER, multiple times. And anyway, this is probably a story in and of itself, my ER visits and my experience with very, very bad EMTs and experience with very, very awesome nurses who knew how to fingerspell so I could communicate. Other story for another time. When I was hospitalized the night before, 2 nights before, it was the third time that the ambulance was called, because at this point I was non-responsive, totally catatonic in my bed. It was just bad. It just got worse and worse. It was just bad. And I was having issues. They came in, the paramedics, they took my blood sugar. It was dangerously low. My blood pressure was dangerously out of whack. And they were like, all right, crap. Oh no, medical emergency. And I was like, well, freaking yes, obviously. But I was relieved. I was like, thank God. Like, because I thought if they didn't see anything physically wrong, they would have dismissed it. And, you know, there's this whole other story of one of the EMTs being abusive one of the times. I'll share that later. Anyway, so I was in the hospital. They kept me overnight with a heart monitor on because it was dangerous. And so what I know now is one of the reasons why autistic catatonia is dangerous is because if it's allowed to get bad enough, the autonomic nervous system, controlling the heart rate, controlling the breathing, blood pressure, can mess up, and it could be life-threatening. And then on top of that, I had stopped being able to initiate movement, so I hadn't eaten in like 8 or 9 or 10 days. It was ridiculous, and so my blood sugar was dangerously low. So I was in the hospital for 2 days, and I ended up having a meltdown. Just a total loss of control, and I don't remember this happening, but apparently I had threatened to, I had said something that made them, worried for my safety, that I was going to try to hurt myself or kill myself, and so I ended up being taken to the state hospital. My memories of the first few days are very, very spotty. I remember getting there, and I was having a meltdown. I'm touch averse. I'm extremely sensitive hearing. They had taken my earplugs out. They were touching me, taking my clothes off of me, and I was freaking out, having a meltdown. And, they were not being cognizant of the fact that I was autistic. But, so I'm gonna time out this and calm down a bit, as I'm sure you guys can tell I'm getting a little overwhelmed, so give me a minute. Okie dokie, we are back. So anyway, a whole lot of the stuff that happened in the hospital, in the state hospital, was due to the fact that I, at that point, am not, clinically diagnosed. So a lot of things that were symptomatic or whatever representative of my autism, like my meltdowns. I have self-injurious meltdowns. I hit my head and bang my head. Obviously in a state mental hospital, they see that kind of behavior a lot, and they were chalking it up to, tantrum or whatever. And because at that point I had figured out what was going on, the autistic catatonia, and that the medication that treated it, that's what I needed, they took my explanations or my saying that this is the medication that treats this thing that nobody knows enough about, but you just gotta trust me because they took that as a drug-seeking behavior, that I was addicted to Ativan, which was not true. So they literally banned me from getting it. And any of my behaviors, like my meltdowns, I did have a couple bad meltdowns, head hitting, and they called, behaviors tantrums. I'm just trying to get out of it. I'm just addicted, and I'm just trying to make a scene so that whatever. So it was rough in and of itself, just being in that state, being, completely worn out, exhausted. But the worst and the most traumatic situation was that they had started giving me Haldol, which I know now I am extremely allergic to. It's a very potent antipsychotic I'm very allergic to. And they kept giving that to me, and I didn't really make the connection until like the third or fourth time, because for the days following, I would, if you know anything about antipsychotics or adverse reactions, I was having dystonia, which, I was having strange twisty neck movements, mouth and jaw movements, my speaking, there's a very distinct sound of speaking for people with dystonia, or some people anyway, and it was like that. Just, yeah, the telltale signs of an adverse reaction that nobody picked up on, and they kept giving it to me, and of course I'm just miserable. There's no words to describe. I mean, I've been through a lot of stuff in my life, a lot, but to this day, those experiences with the allergic reaction to the Haldol are the most physically painful, just miserable things I have ever experienced in my life. Ever. Nothing ever has ever come close. I mean, there's just not a way to express like the reality of how bad it was. So one of the times, I ended up having a full-blown meltdown, which, given the situation, like, obviously, head hitting. And one of the staff, one of the nurses, was, trying to keep me from hitting my head. At that point, it was a loss of control. If you know much about autistic meltdowns, there's a point at which I can't control what's happening anymore. I'm just trying to deal with these miserable feelings, that get the pressure out, kind of thing. And so she was trying to keep me from hitting my head, and she ended up grabbing me by my hair and yanking my head back to keep me from hitting my head on the wall. And then they brought the restraint chair out, which was kind of common practice. They strapped me down on the restraint chair while I'm having, because when I have meltdowns, meltdowns are a physiological, neurological thing that happens. It's not just a mental whatever, not a tantrum. And so when I have meltdowns, I have a very distinct way of shaking that's very neurological. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it is distinct, so my body shakes, but I have these sort of like reflex twitches that are, that to someone who knows what they're looking at is neurological. It's signifying a neurological issue, the way that it is. And so I'm shaking, and they kind of strap me down. I had bruises on my wrists and on my shoulders for ages after, because they had strapped me so tight. And so they strapped me down and they put me in the isolation room. And I had to, they had strapped one of my wrists down so tight that my hand was turning blue. And they had come and straightened it, and I had told, because I was verbal at that point, or I had gotten a few words back, and because they told me, if you don't start talking, we're going to send you to a worse hospital and you can't go home. So, I told the lady that was watching me in the isolation room, my hand is turning, it's too tight. She's like, okay, I'll fix it. And she's reading her book, and she sits there for a while before she comes and fixes the strap that's got my hand turning blue. And, yeah, so one of the guys comes by, the one who had put me in the isolation room because they'd switched. It had been an hour at least, hour and a half maybe, and I was miserable. I was in so much pain. I was so uncomfortable. I had akathisia, which is this sort of internal restlessness, this neurological restlessness that makes me, I feel like I'm dying if I can't move. That was the reaction, one of the reactions to the Haldol. And so if you've ever experienced that, or if you know what that is, imagine experiencing that full blown and then being strapped to a chair and literally not able to move at all. It was torture. It was a literal torture. And so it was about an hour and a half. Guy comes back and he's like, I'll let you out if you promise not to hit your head again. And of course, it's like, I won't hit my head again. And he's like, okay, let me go, something, I need to do this tiny little thing. I'll come back in 5 minutes. He forgot about me, and I was there for another while. It had to have been at least another hour, maybe 2 hours, before they came and let me out. And, anyway, guys, sorry. So, yeah, there's a lot of little things that went on there. Yeah. To date, the worst thing I've ever been through. There's a lot of brokenness and a lot of damage that was done by, just being treated very inhuman. Being treated like the things that were happening were in my control and they weren't. Being punished for, responding to an extremely painful allergic reaction that was obviously not my fault, and furthermore, something that they should have seen. Because it's not an obscure thing to react that way to that kind of medication. So there was just a lot of medical neglect and mistreatment. And it's something that I'm going to be working through for a long time. Clearly, it's just very traumatic. So yeah, that really is just kind of the crash course in my psychiatric hospital experience. Bad news bears all around. It affected me and impacted me very greatly. And, yeah. So that's my story. I love to hear stories that if you have them, if you've had experiences with doctors or psychiatric hospitals or therapists that are positive, please do share them. I think it will be very healing and very helpful for me to encounter stories on the positive end, to sort of come to terms with and just sort of balance out my negative experiences. So if you have positive experiences, please share them. I would ask that you not share your negative experiences. I don't want to deter you from expressing yourself, but it's not something that I am in a place right now to be able to hear, if that makes sense. I mean, as you can tell with this video, it's obviously still something that's very traumatizing for me to even just talk about. And this was a year ago, upwards of a year ago, a little less than a year ago. So just maybe out of respect, just for kind of the PTSD that I've got from it, to refrain from just exacerbating that with stories. But if you have positive stories, encouragement, whatever, by all means share. And again, sorry, this video got long, but something I've wanted to share with you guys for a while. So yeah, that's what I've got for you today. Stay classy and stim freely.